You're listening to China Africa Talk.
Jambo, ni Bridget akikuletea kipindi kinachohusiana na China na Afrika.
Vous écoutez le dialogue sino-africain avec Bridget.
Everything China, everything Africa.
Olá, você está ouvindo China Africa Talk com Bridget.
سيداتي وسادتي مرحبا بكم في الحوار الصيني العربي مع بريدجيت.
Happy New Year and welcome back to the program. This is China Africa Talk. I'm Bridget Mutambirwa and I bring you discussions on what's happening with China and Africa from a Chinese and African perspective. 2026 has been designated the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges, marking an important moment in the long history of cooperation between the two sides. The year also coincides with the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Africa, underscoring the depth and continuity of the relationship. Throughout the year, China and Africa plan to roll out a wide range of programs across culture, education, academia, and civil society, highlighting a shared vision of modernization, mutual respect, and long-term friendship. As both sides look to showcase achievements, celebrate successful initiatives, and chart the next stage of cooperation, what can we expect in 2026? For more on this, I'm now joined by Ju Ya-xiong, Associate Professor at Zhejiang Normal University, Eric Mpona, Vice Chairman of the China-Zimbabwe Exchange Center, and Olivier Mendor, Head of the African Youth Delegation in China. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Professor Ju, 2026 is designated the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges. How does this theme synergize with the goals of China's 15th Five-Year Plan 2026 to 2030 and the next phase of high-quality Belt and Road Initiative cooperation? What impact could this focused year have on China-Africa relations?
Okay. The China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges will further fuel the vitality of the enduring friendship between China and Africa. And the tentative program in this exchange year will include young leaders, cultural kaleidoscope, livelihood booster, symphony of ideas, and the talent incubators, and possibly some more other projects. And I believe this designation of 2026 as such year of exchanges represents a strategic and timely initiative, which creates powerful synergies with the goals of China's 15th five-year plan and the next phase of high-quality Belt and Road Initiative cooperation. You see, in this five-year plan and also BRI cooperation, we are sure to emphasize high-quality development, which make it necessary for us to develop lots of human capital for the future. So this exchange year is sure to help increase human capital with the people participating in such activities. And with their participating and their experience accumulated, I'm sure their human capital will be increased. And additionally, such year of exchange are sure to increase soft connectivity between people, which complements hard connectivity through infrastructure construction, which we have already been doing. And now we're entering the stage of maintaining, of operating, and such things also further increase our communication and also friendship. And thirdly, the exchange activities will foster new drivers of cooperation. And in such experience, we may spot some new ideas for future cooperation. And fourthly, with more and more people participating, people getting to know each other better, and we are sure to see the possibilities of mitigating a lot of risks that may arise without people understanding each other.
Olivier, with China entering the implementation phase of its 15th five-year plan, how can its development experience and focus on high-quality growth be tailored to support Africa's industrialization and modernization goals? Conversely, in what ways can Africa's dynamic markets, demographic dividend, and resource endowments contribute to China's own high-quality development and economic resilience?
Thank you for having me. That's actually a very question. China's 15 five-year plan. I think for me, it's not just blueprint for direct export. By that, I mean copy and paste. I see it as a playbook of principle Africa can inspire from. So for me, I see that very briefly on three policy-driven adaptation. First of all, we know that infrastructure is one of Africa's biggest challenges. So I'm seeing infrastructure industrialization sequencing because China's, if I call it, model was built on foundational infrastructure enabling manufacturing clusters, right? Because, and for Africa, it means Chinese investments moving beyond building isolated projects, coded like, for example, SEZs with integrated supply chain. So if we think, for example, of pairing a Chinese-built railway corridor, say East Africa, agro-processing hubs and light manufacturing parks along its routes. But also I see, we're now talking about digital, AI, but I see a leapfrogging with green and digital because Africa need not to follow the pollute first and clean up later path. Exactly. So when we look at China, we can actually jointly build green industrial parks powered by solar, hydro, or integrating Chinese renewables technology in Africa's critical minerals for battery productions. But also very briefly, skills transfer and core project. But on the other way, your question is very interesting because it's also table on, the African side, right?
Yes.
Conversely, how can we contribute to Chinese high quality development? I think in terms of market resilience and demand diversification, because you mentioned it, we have a dynamic, young and urbanizing market, that African countries offer to China. It is a strategic demographic dividend partner, So Chinese companies move up their value chain, for example, and Africa's growing consumers class provides a testing ground and a demand sink for mid-range technology, smartphones, EVs, even consumer goods, China's reliance on traditional export markets and fostering more resilient economic cycle. The last point that I want to mention is in terms of innovation in solution and partnership. Yes, because Africa's unique challenges foster innovation in fintech, for example, modern infrastructure and climate adaptation. And Chinese tech firms can partner with African startups to co-develop like scalable solutions applicable to other emerging markets. And this positions China's development model more adaptive and globally relevant.
Eric, engaging youth is important to 2026. Now, drawing from your personal experiences, what could have been the most effective or inspiring models for youth-led innovation and entrepreneurship in China-Africa relations?
During my stay here, I think I've had the opportunity to engage with young Africans who are into entrepreneurship here in China, and also young Chinese who are in entrepreneurship in Africa, those who are actually planning to explore the opportunities that are on the continent. In 2023, I went to attend the CAET, the China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo. Similarly, last year I was also there. But during the process, there is a platform that we got to see, which is the China-Africa Youth Forum on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So it gathered a lot of young entrepreneurs, associations from many African countries, particularly Ethiopia. We had some from Zimbabwe, some from South Africa and stuff. So the whole idea behind this is that it seeks to provide a space for African young entrepreneurs to get exposure to the latest technologies here in China, and also bridging the gap between young entrepreneurs from both African continent and China and connecting resources. I think the trend is that we are seeing more training programs from the Chinese side, also incubation platforms and innovation center. Whilst we were participating in that CAET, we visited the China-Africa Youth Innovation and Entrepreneurship Base, which is in Changsha there. We actually had conversation with some of the entrepreneurs there. What I saw is double exposure, as I just mentioned before, that exposure of the African young entrepreneurs to the Chinese technologies and exposure of the Chinese young entrepreneurs to the African market. And besides that, we are seeing not only the participation of the government, we are also seeing the participation of these Chinese big high-tech companies like Huawei. They have a program that they call the Seeds for the Future, which has the potential to empower young ICT entrepreneurs. Many African countries, we have those digital talents who are talented in coding, talented in all things digital.
Yeah.
So they're interested in participating in some of these initiatives, be it competitions or training programs. Okay, talking about the training programs, there's also another program that I got to learn about, which is Sister African Youth Innovation and Entrepreneurship Program, which is initiated by the China Merchant Group. These young entrepreneurs get that exposure that I was talking about by actually getting closer to the top tech companies that are leading at the moment. You talked about the concrete policies that I think we can expect, right? I think we are having more of digital entrepreneurs. That is, most of these young people are more interested in digital stuff. That is e-commerce, and now we have AI. And I was reading a report from the International Finance Corporation that was estimating that more than 230 million jobs in sub-Saharan Africa will require digital skills by 2030. So that means that there is now need for most of these African countries to provide policies to support that, because we do have a very young population there. More than 60% of the African population is under the age of 25. We have to build on already existing platforms, create enabling entrepreneurial environment. So I think the lessons that we can draw from the Chinese experiences is that there is need to have the cooperation between the government and those top industrial players, those who are already there. The top tech companies in Africa should play a very critical role in supporting our young entrepreneurs.
Still holding on to you there, Eric, skills development is a key pillar for 2026. Now, how can China-Africa Vocational Training Corporation be strategically aligned with continental blueprints like the Continental Education Strategy for Africa 2026 to 2035? Which specific areas present the most urgent need and greatest potential for alignment with high-quality Belt and Road investments?
Yeah, I think as far as skills development is concerned, we do have a long way to go. I was reading a report recently that was saying that as far as TVETs is concerned, the percentage of young people aged between 15 to 24 years that are participating in technical or vocational education is actually very low. According to UNESCO, it says that in Northern African region, it's about 6 to 7%. And in Sub-Saharan African region, it's even worse. It's about 1.2%. So that means that we still have a lot of work to do in technical skills development. We need to invest in TVETs. China-Africa Vocational Training Corporation is already shaping very well because they have strategies. More cooperation between these Chinese vocational training institutions with our African vocational training institutions. Also, the participation of Chinese companies. There are different models that they are exploring. For instance, I've recently, as part of my research, interviewed some Chinese companies that are operating in Zimbabwe. And what I got to learn is that we do have, for example, Harare Polytechnic cooperating the Ningbo Polytechnic. We do have both the Chinese state-owned companies or even private companies that are operating in Africa. They are lacking this vocational talent. What we are seeing is that, okay, Chinese companies are coming in and some are even bringing in their own personnel. Why are they doing that? It is because that the kind of operations that they are doing require certain skills and certain knowledge, which some of our vocational training institutions or polytechnics are not providing at the moment. So it is only through that cooperation whereby we cooperate with these companies, we cooperate with the Chinese polytechnics, Chinese vocational schools, and get the skills. So I see there is a very big opportunity that can be leveraged as far as TVET and skills development is concerned.
Olivier, regarding Africa's goal of exporting more value-added goods, how might China's zero-tariff policy for LDCs evolve by 2026 to further incentivize African industrial output?
Yeah, as you know, by 2026, we can actually expect a strategic, I would say, evolution of the China's zero-tariff policy from a broad market access to a targeted industrial partnership tools, because it has actually been set out. The policy will likely shift from merely covering final goods to incentivizing specific industrial inputs and intermediate goods. So we may see the creation, for example, of rules of origin clusters where a group of African countries within a regional economic community, like we have the FCFTA, Continental Free Trade Agreement, which could cumulatively meet origin requirements. And this will encourage cross-border supply chain within African before export. And furthermore, tariff lines could be expanded to cover categories like agro-processed intermediates, for example, cocoa, paste, fruits, concentrates, and also manufactured sub-assemblies like wiring, harnesses, or simple automotive parts to embed African industries into Chinese global value chains. So the promising demand, I see agro-processed and health and wellness goods. This is also very important because the demand will surge for premium or health-oriented products. These align with China's growing middle class focus on nutrition and food safety. I think manufactured component for green and digital. Again, I will have to emphasize on digital tech because China is leading in terms of EVs and renewables, right? And it will see resilient supply chain for non-critical but essential component. And in terms of also creative industries, digital services, we'll see a growing demand for co-produced animation, digital visual effects and localized gaming assets and original, for example, music licensing from Africa's vibrant creative hubs.
That would be nice. Professor Ju, the 2025 to 2027 China-Africa AI Cooperation Plan signals a commitment on a shared future in cyberspace. How does this AI partnership reflect a shift towards high-tech, innovation-driven collaboration within the broader BRI framework? What does this reveal about China's long-term strategic commitment to co-developing digital infrastructure and capabilities with Africa?
Okay, this 2025 to 2027 China-Africa AI Cooperation Plan implied in the Beijing Action Plan. It is a significant component of Belt and Road Initiative, and it represents a strategic pivot towards high-tech and innovation-driven collaboration. You see, after years of developing the hardware infrastructure in terms of communications, network, etc., we are now gradually coming to the stage that such infrastructure will help produce active results for the people. And we need to have more talent participating. And this actually is in line with the global trend toward the digital economy and has already become a key partner in this digital economy and is sure to help Africa in this technological modernization.
Looks like there's a lot in store for us there.
There should be a lot of cooperation projects. First, we have solid infrastructure, and based on that, gradually we have a lot of projects to be implemented on that hard infrastructure. With the data accumulated, we are digger into data mining and gradually AI to facilitate the future innovation and future development.
Practical cooperation that directly benefits communities is also expected in 2026. Now, could you give us examples from your country, from Cameroon, of China-Africa community development initiatives and how the locals are reacting to them?
Okay, there's so many sectors that I can list here, but I would focus on maybe the ones that I think are standing out. I think the health sector in Cameroon, the health sector is actually very out there because we have what we call the China-Africa Friendship Hospitals in Cameroon. I would take the example of the one in Douala. We have what we call the Gyneco-Obstetrics and Pediatric Hospital in Douala, the most populated city in Cameroon. Because you have to know that for decades, Chinese teams have provided direct clinical services and donated several medical equipment and conducted training. And more recently, the China-aided Yaoundé Gynecology Obstetrics Pediatric Hospital has been a landmark project. And Yaoundé is the capital city of Cameroon, by the way. The population actually is having positive kind of reaction because, first of all, we can see immediate gratitude because there is a significant appreciation, especially in rural or peri-urban areas where access to specialized care is limited. But there is also a skill transfer focus, in the reaction, because the reaction is shifting from, we are not just being there for pure gratitude, but we can see a stronger desire for sustainable skill transfer. Because Cameroonians in general, they actually value initiatives where Chinese doctors train Cameroonian counterparts on new techniques, equipment maintenance, ensuring long-term benefit beyond the presence of the foreign team. But also, I can take another one in terms of youth education skills, because we have Confucius Institutes here and vocational training centers here. That's very important because Cameroon is a very young country. It has a youthful population. So we have Confucius Institutes, for example, at the University of Yaoundé too, and several co-created, co-established vocational institutions focused on agriculture, because we have, for instance, the Chinese agro-expert working with local farmers on rice cultivation, for example. And this has a positive reaction, especially from the youth. The youth engagement. Confucius are popular not just because of the language, but young professional, they are seeing that as a valuable career skill linked to scholarship, going to China to be trained, and also employment with Chinese companies. That's also something that's put forward. And we also have Cameroonian farmers reacting positively to demonstrable or yield improving techniques. So the success is just purely on practical and sustainability.
Eric, I'm also going to pose that question to you. Could you give us examples from Zimbabwe of China-Africa community development initiatives and how Zimbabweans are reacting to them?
Yeah, these companies that are coming into the continent, they are bringing in practical benefits to the people. I think the most important one is jobs. Right. We have big companies, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we have companies like Dinson Iron and Steel. They've just opened a steel plant in Zimbabwe, which may be going to be one of the biggest steel plants on the continent. And so when that kind of a big investment happens, it opens more job opportunities for the locals. I was at their steel plant, and I got to learn that there were about 1,700 locals. That's a lot of people. That tells you that there are a lot of practical benefits that are coming for the people. So when they get jobs, their livelihoods improve. We are also seeing that through their CSR projects, most of these Chinese companies are also giving back to the community. But I think the most important thing besides providing jobs, I think it's skills transfer.
Olivia was also highlighting that the issue of skills transfer
is very critical. Basically, what I'm seeing from the locals is much of their reaction is towards the issue of jobs, towards the issue of getting maybe high salaries, towards the issues to do with environmental protection and stuff. But I would want to highlight more that we should also be giving more attention to the skills transfer issues. We have seen positive feedback from the communities, but of course there is also just a few cases whereby you would have negative feedback from the local communities when you are at that level of starting to industrialize.
Professor Ju, academic conferences, think tank dialogues and media forums will encourage deeper intellectual and policy exchanges. Do you think the media is doing enough? Where there are gaps, what needs to be done? I'm taking notes here, hey?
Okay. In China, media efforts are actively encouraged and supported to enhance discourse and promote understanding and contribute national and global policy discussion. But based on my experience of traveling in African countries and interaction with my African students, I realized these young people are not very well informed of what's happening in China and China-Africa cooperation, which shows the reach limit of Chinese media sometimes. Even though I told them, yes, we have English coverage of this story and that, and they say, okay, they are habitually following the Western media. And that actually kind of disappointing me. And China's media has made substantial progress in promoting constructive exchanges, especially in areas aligned with national development and development strategies and technological advancements and international cooperation. China has also invested in expanding its global media presence, which help share perspectives on governance, development models, and global initiatives such as the Belt and Road Initiative and China-Africa Cooperation. We believe, in addition to providing comprehensive and objective coverage of news, the media is also responsible for mobilizing joint efforts for building a better future. In terms of covering China-Africa cooperation, our media have adequate coverage. Then again, sometimes based on my experience, I figure media in many African countries, they seem to have a different view of covering issues or stories arising in China or related to China-Africa cooperation. They still retain stereotypes from the Western media. So in the future, I wish we are to see more African media to have objective coverage of the events and stories arising from our cooperation. I'm very sure with informed knowledge of the cooperation, we can anticipate more future cooperation, and our people will feel freer to enter such a cooperation. And I wish also to see more international media's collaboration to exchange best practices to co-create contents on improving young people's perception on cooperation and support kind of investigative and explanatory coverage on some key cooperation projects with a focus on evidence-based and balanced reporting. Lastly, I wish that we are to make use of digital and social media platform, which is easier and freer and to reach younger and a broader audience with engaging yet substantive contents to increase Chinese as well as African people's understanding of the culture and the benefits of our cooperation.
Okay. As a media person, I've also been taking notes, as I mentioned. I also agree with you. A lot of Africans are still Western oriented when it comes to media. Maybe more needs to be done in terms of policies and in terms of what kind of content is aired on African platforms. Balance it out with the West and with the East as well. Hopefully this year of people-to-people exchanges will actually trigger discussions around ways in which media houses in Africa can be more accommodative toward China-Africa stories. But the challenges, a lot of the times, my two biggest challenges that I've experienced so far when I want to get information from the ground, from Africa, usually connection issues and also language issues.
You know, the reality is true. You see, language. So that's why I encourage my international students. They are in English programs. I encourage them to, okay, you'd better learn Chinese in order to know China better. Because if you are able to speak Chinese, you are immediately able to communicate with more than 1.5 billion people. So that's a great advantage for you in your future career. And if you are able to read Chinese, you have access to a lot more information, which may help you in your future career in finding or spotting cooperation opportunities with the Chinese people.
Again, I'm going to pose this question to you, Eric and Olivier. Based on your experiences studying in China and researching China-Africa relations, are there any particular insights or perspectives you'd like to share with us and the audience?
Yeah, last year I had the honor during the World Chinese Conference. I was part of the young sinologists who wrote to President Xi, and we got his response. One of the things that I think was mentioned in that reply was that we, as young sinologists or as young people who are interested in learning or studying China, we should be the bridge of civilization dialogue between China and the world. This is what President Xi is expecting from us. A huge challenge to us because there's a lot of work to be done. But what I have been doing is to share what I'm seeing. We are getting closer and closer. Our relationship is no longer just about exchange of goods and services. One of the most important things is that this year is the year of people-to-people exchanges between China and Africa. I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in actually telling the China-Africa stories. At China-Zimbabwe Exchange Center, we have done so much last year, and we are planning to do more this year. We have a lot of flagship programs. This year, we are planning to have even more so that our conversations go beyond just touching the surface. We want them to get even much deeper, to promote mutual understanding and mutual learning. There is a lot that has to be done. And I think also us as the young people will have a strong, significant role to play in this.
Olivier?
Okay, definitely. Based on my experience, there are a few insights that I want to put forward here. First of all, I think the African agency perspective is still underreported. That's why at Peking University, we just released a book that is called Development and China-Africa Cooperation,
Right.
African Agency and Global Partners.
Right.
Because Africa has a very young population. So the African agency is underreported. And in this book, we want to showcase how African countries and Africa, especially African young people, are shaping the geopolitical relations. By that, I mean Africa as a partner and, for instance, China, right? So the African agency perspective is very important because it positions Africa in very balancing kind of settings in development partner, because Africa has so something to bring at the table, right? So as the head of the African youth delegation in China, I also want to bring here the fact that we are not just here to export, we don't call that the China model for us, a young African, but we call that China's experience.
Okay.
It's not just about importing the China experience, but it's about seeing how we can adapt it to Africans' realities, how we can get inspiration, build our own based on what we see from where China came from. And I can see a very important cultural dimension.
Just to wind up our discussion, Professor Ju, global governance and modernization are frequently discussed nowadays. What are the most valuable lessons China can offer African countries as we enter 2026?
I believe we have a lot. China's engagement with Africa offers several valuable lessons in global governance and modernization. China's emphasis on areas in infrastructure-led development, agricultural self-sufficiency, and digital leapfrogging, and a governance model that prioritizes sovereignty and South-South cooperation is well worth the global consideration, particularly developing countries in Africa. And actually, these lessons have been properly embodied in many cooperation projects through concrete initiatives like a Belt and Road Initiative and Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Let's take like agricultural self-sufficiency, for example. I think as early as Premier Zhou last time, when he visited the African countries, he started the agricultural cooperation programs, typically with the Chinese philosophy of teaching a man to fish. You see, we are sure if we are able to provide them a means of survival, that would be way better by just offering them than some
Donations.
help or some donation or some commodity. That's way more important. For the lessons to be truly valuable, the countries have to localize the Chinese experience. They have to take all their local situation, conditions, and the needs into serious consideration.
Yes. It's not just copy and paste.
Not just purely from the size of the countries. You see, China is a huge country. While in many African countries, they are small. And in terms of population, you see, China, we have over 1.4 billion people. And then some African countries, they have just like 2 million, 30 million. Okay, that's way too small in terms of carrying out some development projects.
Which is something besides like one province in China.
Yeah, true. And also, I wish the African people need to have this like understanding for mutual benefit and win-win cooperations. You have to make sure the cooperation is mutually beneficial. Finally, you need to develop projects that focus on tangible outcome. When you see the cooperation between China and African countries, there are always results. The results benefit the people. Like the bridge, the roads, everything. And nowadays we have some like a small but beautiful projects. We dig wells for the people.
Which are actually very
water.
Which I also find very suitable in many African countries. It's a good start.
True.
Yeah. All right. At that, we'll end our discussion there. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And to you and our listeners, happy 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Listeners, you can subscribe to our online newsletter on CGTN or Substack to get more insights on China-Africa relations. Just search China-Africa Talk. For now, it's goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. See you next time.